Hey everyone, welcome to the Royal Fumblers. I'm Andrew, aka Drewski. This is Statty McStatterson, Michael Brady over here. We got Danny the Mouth. He's got laryngitis.
Got a little green in the face.
He's
a
not
little
feeling
sick.
super well, so he's going to be in the background, just doing his best. Might have been drinking a little bit too much. Sorry,
it was a long draft. It was a long draft, exhausting. Yeah. So yeah, I get it. Some people can't handle their liquor, whatever.
It was an interesting draft. I mean, look, they say that the big draft, the big one is going to be next year, but I thought that there was enough happening in this draft to make things pretty interesting. I think some teams tended to work on their core, think of their long-term goals as opposed to, like I feel like the Lions had a very successful draft. Brady countered with maybe they didn't. So there's a lot of different thoughts. We'll get to that soon.
We got to get this started by talking about the NFC South.
So, guys, you can't even start this without saying it's amazing what Tampa Bay pulled off. They literally, to me, they bought the Super Bowl. Every time I thought they had no salary cap left, they just did it every single time. They just did something else. And then I was like, no, man, they're absolutely loaded. How are they going to get bigger? And then they got Leonard Fournette,
Then they pick up Antonio Brown.
Then they pick up Antonio Brown. So, right. So let's madness. Okay. So right now, how many wide receiver ones do they have on their team?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. So, they still have the same three that they had from last year. They got Mike Evans, they got Chris Godwin, and they got Antonio Brown. All guys who in the past have been phenomenal fantasy wide receiver ones.
Top 5 fantasy finishers.
Oh, definitely. Antonio Brown's been number 1. Chris Godwin finished at number 2 years ago. Mike Evans was, even back when we had Jameis Winston, he was the top 5. He was always a good value.
Yeah.
Yes. Here's the thing. You got Tom Brady in there, who's going to make them still look good. But there was a couple times last year, especially in the beginning of the season, you had Mike Evans, who was getting, that one game he had 1 yard, 1 catch for 1 yard and a touchdown. He gave you 8 points from that touchdown. But that was it. That was all he did that whole game almost. So, here's the thing. I'm doing the Danny. Here's the thing. But
no. Anytime you feel like naysaying. So before we do that, let's talk all the good things, and then we can do the where's.
Okay.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
Let's talk about some more good things we got, because here's the thing. They have a lot of good stuff going on. They have those guys, and they have a brand new wide receiver as well, right? They also have brought in another wide receiver.
They drafted Jalen Darden from North Texas. They got him in the 4th round,
which is fine. I mean, he might come in and put in some spot moments. You also have your 2 running backs right now, which are Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, and
technically 3 running backs. Because remember, they have
the Vaughn as well.
Yeah, Keyshawn Vaughn, who's in there, was not fan. I mean, he didn't really do anything last year, and I still think that we can't understand what he's trying to tell us, because because I mean, listen, he said last year, Ronald Jones was going to be the guy, and then they bring in Leonard Fournette. Now, this year in the offseason, they're saying Keyshawn Vaughn is going to have a breakout year. But then they signed Leonard Fournette back to another contract. And you're kind of like, well, I can't believe a single word that's coming out of your mouth, really. Because unless you're trying to step him above Ronald Jones or somebody else. And last year, Leonard Fournette looked great. He fit well in that offense. I know Danny can't stand it. Danny, I see you looking with your eyes so sad right now. But I mean, the fact is he's Super Bowl champion, Leonard Fournette. I mean, right now, Ronald Jones didn't do didn't do as much. Keyshawn Vaughn just whatever. But
so all right. So we got a few things going on right now, and then we also have. So
you got Tom Brady.
Depth chart. Right now we got the tight ends, which are Gronkowski and
OJ Howard and Cameron Brate
loaded there. Okay. And then we have Tom Brady, and he's got his new protege backup, mini Tom Brady.
They got Kyle Trask from sorry, let me adjust here. Kyle Trask from Florida, which is, I guess, if you want to say, hey, that's kind of cool. They got a hometown boy to back up Tom Brady whenever he decides to, call it quits, is, in the next 10 years or so. And, and there you go. I mean, he's never going away. You can't become. No. I mean, he's already a legend, but you can't forget about him if he's still playing. So
the reason I'm saying all of this, okay, the reason that I'm like, okay, because we can go down a rabbit hole on any of these individual players, because all of these players individually on another offense could be high-end players. All right.
Sure.
Leonard Fournette in a couple years ago
in the right offense,
crushing it.
Yeah.
Major rusher. Ronald Jones looked amazing in certain games. In the first 2/3 of the season, looked until he got hurt. He went down a little bit hurt, and then Leonard Fournette came over and took over and just plowed him through the rest. But Ronald Jones looked good this season, doing very different things than Leonard Fournette would do. Mike Evans didn't necessarily look very good at the beginning of the season, but I feel like there was a chemistry issue with Brady. The issue is, though, well, even once you get the chemistry, and they've re-signed, by the way, all 24 or all 22 starters.
22 starters, yeah.
Sorry, 24. I don't know.
No, you're good, man.
All 22 starters, which has never been done before, never happened before in the history, and in the Super Bowl era is what I've been told. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Well, now how many of them are fantasy relevant? I say very few. I say there's so many mouths to feed, and they're all okay with that, and they're all going to be good. The only person that really is happy by this situation is Tom Brady, who is now the quarterback 7, quarterback 8, because he doesn't even care. He's going to just give the ball off to his running backs half the time.
Sure.
So,
well, I mean, listen, this is another one of those cases where reality is not good for fantasy. In reality, they're a great, solid team. They've got enough guys. The problem is fantasy value. I mean, if we're talking about, if we find out later this in the offseason here that they trade away, Mike Evans or somebody like that, then we can we can revisit. Yeah, they'll trade him for Julio. But we can revisit this situation later, because to me, if Mike Evans isn't there, then Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown have tremendous value. Vice versa, if somebody else is gone, so it just muddies things up a little bit. If I don't like. Same thing with the running backs. I'm not a huge fan with the running backs. I like Leonard Fournette. I like Ronald Jones. I like them individually, and I just don't know what they're going to do. So, sorry, Danny, you can leave. We're talking about Leonard Fournette, but yeah, I mean, listen, I want to know what I'm drafting. You know what I'm saying? I want to know what I'm getting into. Last year, I know even you were talking about I'm going to get both Fournette and Jones, because if one of them falters, you'll have the other one. Well, it's a gamble if you just have one of them. I do think Fournette looked better, and I was actually excited because I was hoping Fournette was going to go somewhere else possibly, and where he fit into a better scheme. But that just didn't work out that way. And maybe he just wants to win another Super Bowl. Those guys, if they've bought into the culture there, then great. But fantasy-wise, it's hard to trust.
Nobody was showing Leonard Fournette love last year. Nobody was.
No.
At the end, when
they couldn't trade him away. They couldn't even trade him away.
Couldn't even trade him away. Leonard Fournette came in. He's like, "Look, I'm going to come in. I'm going to win." It took him about 4 or 5 games to get a feel for what's going on. And even then, it still took a little bit longer. And when he finally got a feel for the offense, you really saw it click. You just saw the fact that he bought into what was going on, and the line bought into him, and everybody believed in each other. And all of a sudden, that Tampa Bay became a good team. And remember, there were games that they were just unwatchable. Tampa Bay didn't look good all season, but they looked good at the end of the year, which wouldn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
I think that they come out and they're dominant next year. Here's the thing about me with Fournette, though. I think Vaughn will step up. I think that Jones will still have will have a place, and they'll go with a hot hand. But I do believe that Fournette will be their featured back next year. I think that he understood the offense. He can catch the ball. It showcased his catching skill last season.
Yeah.
Because it's not that Jones couldn't play. It's just that he wasn't as good of a pass catcher.
Yeah. Well, and he was also, I don't think he was as good as a pass blocker as well, which if you can't block for Tom Brady, he doesn't want you on the field. And it seems like Bruce Arians, I don't even know if Ronald Jones did anything necessarily wrong, but he was just looking for opportunities to get him on the bench. He would make one mistake, and I was like going, if you don't really like this guy, then why, he'd roll him back out there and give people some false hope, and all of a sudden he misses one. He misses one assignment, and all of a sudden you're like, he's on the bench, Fournette's back in, or whatever.
Well, when you discussed what he says to the press, and this is the other side. He doesn't talk to the press, so the press knows the information. He talks to the press because he knows his guys are watching.
Yeah,
he's telling these guys, he's telling the press exactly what he wants his guys to hear to get them motivated. Oh, Keyshawn Vaughn, he's got to feel bad about himself right now. He thought that he was going to be moving up and moving forward, and he's got talent. Maybe he does, but being the third guy and thinking that you're going to be the guy, it's a tough place to be.
Sure.
So do whatever it takes. The cheapest version of influencing somebody on a positive level, do it. And that's just a smart coaching. So that's just good coaching.
Sure.
Anyway,
I mean, if you're gonna, just to do a quick, just because I don't think I did earlier, fantasy value on these guys. Godwin, Mike Evans, you're looking at, to me, wide receiver 2-ish, high end, wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. Antonio Brown, I'm looking at maybe wide receiver 3. For those running backs, Fournette, this is where it gets hard for me because I'm looking at Ronald Jones as maybe both of them running back 3.
Low end RB2-1, low end RB2A, low end RB2B. But only if you feel like they're getting the touches. And it's almost like you have to. I mean,
where you can draft him in a draft. No, if you want to take a shot at Fournette as your third or fourth running back, where if something happens where they get rid of Ronald Jones and he is the guy, possibly, I could maybe see that. I just find it hard to draft Ronald Jones. I when I'm doing a mock draft, I can't pull the trigger. But sometimes if I'm there and I got a fourth running back and I'm like, Fournette's still on the board, I'll give it a shot.
If I have Fournette, I want to get Ronald Jones. If I have Ronald Jones, I want to have Fournette. I don't want to have one or the other. I just don't. I just don't feel like they're usable. I will say, though, that I think that Fournette starts at the beginning of next season, and I think Fournette is the guy. And I would put him as an RB2 right now.
Okay.
I'm a little trepidatious about it.
Well, you're talking about a guy. I always go running back heavy. When I draft, that's what I'm looking for. I honestly, if I'm drafting and Leonard Fournette is my running back too, I'm freaking out a little bit. Or
reasonable.
I may have, unless I had 3 wide receivers that fell to me that are just phenomenal wide receivers. Something. If I've got Kelsey, but I've also got Tyreek Hill and somebody else has fallen to me, I can maybe make a case to do that. It makes me nervous though.
But Fournette is a weird case for me that I could see him overcoming this, 60s, 70s that I feel like he's in right now, and being the guy that could get 10 to 15 points a game with Ronald Jones. But I don't know enough.
Sure.
Last season didn't make me feel better about drafting either one of them individually. And when you have to draft 2, that's putting a lot of faith in something that if I could draft him back to back, I would. If I could draft him back to back in like 6th and 7th round, I would probably do that.
No, man, maybe.
If they were like it's a weird thing. It's like, okay, that's
Sure.
sort of like RB, but I don't see them as the level of like you have the Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb. All right.
No.
They're not like that. But they do have some value. And it's like,
sure.
But they are more usable to me than say a Zach Moss and Devin Singletary.
Yeah, I could maybe see that. I see. I that one definitely. I can see that. That's a good comp.
It's a very difficult. They're a good combination of backs, but you can't use them. There was a little while where I was watching them get in a PPR league. One guy would get 11, the other guy would get 9. And there were a few games in a row like that. I feel like, but when I felt like Tampa Bay was playing at their best, which I have to feel like they're better as a team and knowing what they are now than they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
One guy was getting a lot of touches, and then the other guy and then they would take a break. And one guy would get like 17, 18, 19 points, and the other guy would get like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 points.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happened more but yeah,
I know.
Maybe
it's frustrating.
The simple truth is just probably avoid them.
Yeah. I mean, unless you just got, like you said, I'll take a shot. When I've done a couple mock drafts, I've taken a shot on like Leonard Fournette, but
he's a bench guy right now for me, though. The truth is, I'm not drafting him to start him, and if you're not drafting them to start him, you're probably not going to be able to afford them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's move on. So from there on, Gronkowski, does he have tight end value?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that you can go, I think, late round value. If you miss on the big 3 and then you can't get somebody, to me, after those big 3, if you can't get Andrews or Hawkinson, maybe Dallas Goedert, you can't get those guys, I'd be looking at, any of those late round guys, and he falls into that category. I mean, you could do that. I don't know with OJ Howard coming back, I don't know what that's going to look like.
It could be weird. The weird thing is, that there's going to be some guy in the 5th round who's like, Gronkowski's there?
Yeah.
I'm in. 5th round pick.
Yeah. Something like that.
We know this guy.
Yeah.
Looking at you, David. All right. Guys, move on to the next one a little bit. I just want to say it was last year before we started recording, before we did all this stuff, and everybody was quarantined and we were Zooming and we were watching the draft, and it was fun. We had a good time. It just wasn't as exciting. And to have all the people back, to actually have the guys live there, it just made, I think the NFL did a good job making it over the top. Like, it was just fun. They really incorporated the fans, and it was fun to see, and it was fun to watch. As much as we were having a good time trying to make the picks and have a good time talking to each other about it, it was fun in general. So I was excited to see that. I think it's a great thing to say, to kind of point out, like, the NFL is not as good without the fans. It's just not. You know what, Brady? I'm pumped about next season, and I may find a way to get out to a game. I think we need to get out to a game. Is what I'm saying. We need to.
Yeah, no, we need to go, man. There's plenty of places, close to both of us, man. There's a lot of good stadiums, a lot of good facilities I want to go check out. And especially at Atlanta, I want to go to Atlanta's new one, man. They have that new one built up.
That would be super cool.
Continuing with the NFC South, the Carolina Panthers. What about them?
So they traded for Sam Darnold. They didn't draft a quarterback, which a lot of people, including myself, thought if Justin Fields fell to him, they were going to take him, and they did not. So that just tells me that they're pretty sold on Sam Darnold. Not only that, they traded away Teddy Bridgewater to Denver
for a 6th round pick. That's nothing.
I think they see something in him that, that obviously Adam Gase, not only could he not see, but he couldn't bring out in him. So, and we saw what Teddy did. Teddy had a very, at times fantasy relevant. I used him. I needed a streamer back last year. You throw a guy this, I would say, got a little more arm talent than Teddy Bridgewater in there at Sam Darnold. So I'm actually interested. It makes me curious for him. So
yeah, I would say that Teddy Bridgewater tends to play to safety. I think he plays well with a grinded out offense really, really well. But I don't think that's what they want to do. I think they want to attack. And Darnold is an attacking quarterback. He's got a good arm when he's healthy, which, he had some issues with mono a little bit back and some other things. I don't think that you get him out of the Gase stranglehold. And I think he's got some real opportunity. I'm really excited to see what he can do.
The Gase stranglehold is a real thing. I mean, we've seen players under Adam Gase, they leave, they have success. I mean, the list goes on. Devontae Parker, once he got out of there, Devontae Parker, Kenyon Drake. There's a list of guys that have had successful careers who just got hampered in that Adam Gase offense.
Yeah. So let's explore that offense for just a second in terms of fantasy right now. So right now, Darnold may become fantasy relevant. I think they definitely want him to be the guy. They're excited. So would you rank Darnold? Do you think he gets a boost in his fantasy value for a 2 quarterback fantasy base?
He would have to be a 2 quarterback fantasy base. I think if you're in a 1 quarterback league, and most average teams are, you're playing in 10 to 12 team leagues, you can definitely find somebody, and even probably a backup, maybe a little better than he is. I'm not saying he's not going to be good at all. I'm just saying that, just the way it's a position of scarce that you don't really have to fill in. It's not like it's running back where you need 3 or 4 on your team. You only need at least 1 or 2. Now, if you're talking about 2 quarterback league, definitely, I would have him as my quarterback 2, possibly quarterback 3. A good, if anything, he's going to be a guy just like Teddy Bridgewater, I would think. But I would say with more upside, because I used Teddy in a 2 quarterback league. I even had to use him in a 1 quarterback league in the right matchups when I had guys down. So, I mean, this Carolina offense is a big offense, and whoever is in it is going to have fantasy value.
But let me ask you a question. So he's not going to check down the same way that Teddy does.
I don't think so, no.
Does that lower the value? I mean, obviously, Christian McCaffrey's value is almost, unless he gets hurt, it's always going to have high value. But does that lower his pass catching? Is he going to start going downfield more?
I would think so. And we saw that in with the Jets. Now, he also, don't get me wrong, he does like he used Chris Herndon, and he used especially Jamison Crowder in New York quite a bit. He does have that big arm, so the plays are always going to be there. But he'll find guys like Christian McCaffrey. He'll find guys like Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore. They started mixing them back and forth a little bit. At the beginning of the season, Anderson was more of their slot guy, and DJ was their deep threat guy, which was it's not what they've done in the past. Yeah, and Anderson's always been a deep threat guy. So to move them in there was interesting. I think they moved him a little bit back and forth last year, and then Curtis Samuel came on and everything. But, this year, I think DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson have tremendous value. You don't have Curtis Samuel there anymore. To me, their value goes up. You've also got Christian McCaffrey in the field. And for whatever – I know you want to say he's going to get his. Don't get me wrong. But if that offense is as exciting as it was in some of the games with Christian McCaffrey last season, everybody's going to have value. He's going to put him in positions to score. He's a big threat on the field. I'm interested, maybe Robbie Anderson goes back to that deep threat guy because him and Darnold do have a connection when they played in New York together. I'm curious. The only thing they did do in the draft, they drafted a pretty decent wide receiver in Terrence Marshall, and he's going to fill in probably that 3rd slot guy or that 3rd wide receiver because they do like to run a lot of those 3 wide receiver sets there. And he was good. Also, I think they have they lost Mike Davis. I kind of like they have a confident back that they drafted in Chuba Hubbard, who I like him a lot. I thought he was good. He was a good pass catching running back. So he's going to be a good backup in case McCaffrey. Not it's going to have fantasy value. I'm just touching on their draft though. But
right. I got you. And I tell you what, I'm excited to see what they do. I actually think they're going to be a much improved team next year, at least in terms of fantasy points. I think they're kind of like a sneaky team that could either as a streaming quarterback. I think I think that it could be a very valuable. I think that Darnold would be very valuable as a streaming quarterback, or as maybe a backup quarterback option.
Sure.
And as QB2 in a in the right system for a 2 quarterback league.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Because he has plenty of options, and he's got a little bit of blocking, and I think they're going to be okay. After that, we'll go to the next one. So we're going to touch on the Atlanta Falcons, headlined by my favorite player in the NFL, Younghoe Koo. He is a fantastic leader for that organization for 1.5 years now, and after that they have some other fantasy relevant players, but Younghoe Koo. Seriously, I mean, we got.
If you're in a kicker heavy league, go ahead and get your kicker early, buddy. And I mean, he's moved his way up the board. I mean, a fantasy pro shows him a lot of love. He's right behind Justin Tucker, but ESPN has not come on board yet for some reason. So
I don't know if they updated their kickers, which they should consistently because it's such a valuable position. I joke, but here's the thing about Younghoe. I think he was more valuable than any other kicker last season.
Oh, he was phenomenal.
And if you had him, you were winning games that maybe you shouldn't have because of some of the stuff that he was pulling off, especially in the months of basically everywhere from early November to late December. He did have a kind of a fluff of a couple of bad games at the very, very end. And when I say bad games, like they really weren't bad. They were like 60-yard field goals that he missed.
Yeah.
A
lot of people, there's even a lot of leagues that don't even have the kicker in there. I know some of the podcasts I listen to that are big out there. They're like, get rid of kickers. Don't even worry about them anymore. I'll say this. If you're in a league, if you don't want to have kickers, that's fine. If you're in a league that does have kickers, I'm not saying you reach for a kicker, but man, when you're in a shallow 10-team league, and you guys are evenly across the board, but your kicker can, like Younghoe did at the last year, averaging almost 12 to 15 points a game.
He was getting 25 points as a kicker.
I mean, that could be the difference maker. So if you're in a league, if you don't want kickers in your league, take them out. If you want kickers in your league, I'm very traditional, so I like to have them in there. But man, you can't go wrong with somebody like that. So let's get some more relevant fantasy value.
All right, let's talk a little more about the other leaders on that team. But I will tell you that, quite frankly, like, he was the highlight last season. Last season was tough to watch at times. Not because of the offense. The offense was valuable for fantasy all season for the most part. Just their defense was just tough. So do not pick their defense. Just saying, they're not going to get that much better this offseason either. But I will say that
they picked up some defense in the draft. They picked up some defense, but not enough to change everything in a year's time.
Yeah, they got some work to do still, and those guys got to develop. So we're going to go ahead and say we're going to talk about Matt Ryan. You can't. I mean, it's the Falcons. You got to talk about Matt Ryan first. Matt Ryan has been. He's getting older.
Sure.
But I still say that he's quality fantasy relevant year in and year out, sometimes more so than others.
Sure. I mean,
where would you put him in terms of quarterback? Is he a low-end quarterback one? Is he a high-end quarterback two?
I think if you're in a single quarterback league, you have a late round guy. And, sometimes quarterbacks go early. If you're a guy like myself that I don't take a lot of quarterbacks that early, Matt Ryan may be a guy of some value, especially now with, he's still got weapons. He's still got, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But, I mean, he's got weapons where he can be productive. Their defense is not very good, which means they're going to have to throw the ball to stay in games, which made him fantasy relevant, makes the guys on his team, it makes them fantasy relevant. So are there a bunch of like guys that look a lot better? Possibly. Yeah. But I mean, The fact is, the guy they're in a tough division that they're going to have to score to keep up with teams like the Saints, like Tampa Bay, now North Carolina. I mean, they're going to be he's going to be fantasy relevant. So you can't go quarterback two quarterback league. Oh, I have no problem picking him up. Let's go put him on the roster.
He's a high value in a 2 quarterback
sure.
league. Potentially, he would it shock you to see him as like QB5 this year?
No, well, I mean, there's so many good quarterbacks. I know
there are, but would it shock you? I'm not saying do you think it's going to happen? I said, would it shock you?
It might. Now, if you move that back to top 10, I can get on board. I won't be.
Let me add 4 pieces to this equation real quick. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
I'm going to add the fact that he's got Calvin Ridley. Okay.
Yes.
That's a pretty good receiver, right?
Oh my, yeah. I mean, listen, last year was his breakout year. Everybody's been predicting it for the last 2 years. He's been in the league 3 last year. Now, some of it was because Julio was hurt, but I think you saw that Calvin Ridley has emerged into a wide receiver 1. Even on my board, I've got him at number 7 overall. I think he's the 7th best wide receiver. No disrespect to Julio Jones. And here's the thing, you're talking about another receiver. They still got the veteran Julio Jones. He's been there for years. He's going to be fine. And
he's healthy.
Yes. And here's the thing. They use him in the slot quite a bit. So he can be a deep threat. But now that he's older and you've got guys like Calvin Ridley, and he's got another guy that we'll talk about in a second who can take the top off the defense as well, you can run him in a variety of different situations where you're not having to kill him all the time. He is older, and the injuries are baked in. This is the first year I don't have Julio inside my top 10, but that doesn't. But do I have him in my top 12? Yeah, I'm okay with that. So honestly, Julio might be a sleeper value this year if he's not going to go in that first round. So
that's key. So we got two
great wide receivers.
Great wide receivers. Either one of them could be top 10, and probably it's very likely that both of them could be top 10 by the end of the season. We're going to go and let's do a new addition, but not the one you think. Let's do Mike Davis, a pass catching back.
Yes.
That he can catch. He can extend the defense. And that's their number 1 running back right now, probably.
How could you not love him? If you're a Christian McCaffrey owner last year and you had Mike Davis as your replacement, he possibly saved your fantasy season last year. I was a CMC owner who didn't have him in one league, and he actually helped bring somebody else a championship.
And I helped give them like literally the decision that I made blew up in my face in 3 different directions.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, he was great. He was great. Listen, we saw him slow down a little bit at the end of the season. And that's okay. Some of that was also the offense. It wasn't going as well. Teddy didn't look as good as he did at the beginning of the season. So I get it. But he showed he's got value. And really in Atlanta, with all the other weapons they have, they just want somebody who can be competent enough right now. I'm a little surprised they didn't draft another running back, especially in the second round. Javonte Williams was the third best running back off the board. They had an opportunity to draft him. Instead, they drafted a safety. So, I mean, I understand they were trying to look at
how many points did the safety cost them last year as a team, though.
And exactly. And so, I mean, their picks were, they went tight end, safety, defense or offensive line, and cornerback. So they are addressing their safeties, the secondary where they got burnt so many times. So they're doing that. They're taking care of that. I think Mike Davis could have value. I think he's definitely in that RB2 category.
He's a low-end RB2 right now, but he's going to get enough pass-catching value.
Sure.
But let's talk about another pass-catch because so right now we got RB2. And we have two potential wide receiver ones. Now let's talk about the brand new, beautiful piece to the Falcons. Arguably the one of the top two talents in the draft, which is Kyle Pitts.
Yes.
A super talented 6'6", long, athletic, fast former quarterback player that has huge pass catching skills. Not much of a blocker at this time. I think he can grow in that. I think his frame will get bigger as well. But where do you rank him? Now, remember, Hayden Hurst is
still on the team.
He's still on the team. He got brought in with a trade the previous season, who, when he was healthy, was very good for them.
Yeah, he was okay. I will say this. I expected higher expectations out of Hayden Hurst. That was just me personally. We've seen what the tight end position can produce in Atlanta. Austin Hooper was there for 2 or 3 years. By his second year, I think probably the 2-3 years before then, he was fantasy relevant. He had huge games. Hayden Hurst didn't really have those huge games, but he also didn't have any of the games that were just like awful. It was just, there were some bad games. Don't get me wrong, but nothing that was like that you wouldn't get off a normal tight end, I guess. But he also didn't exceed expectations. Somebody like Kyle Pitts, you do have Hayden Hurst still there. He's there for at least another year with that contract. But also, he's more of a veteran guy. So you want to talk about blocking. You have your blocking tight end with Hayden Hurst. He did that a lot when he was with the Ravens. That's how they run their offense. So I think you're good there. You bring in a guy like Kyle Pitts. Whether they use him as a tight end or not, because they still could use him. They could classify him as a wide receiver. I think fantasy value, everybody's like going, please be a tight end, because there's so much value to be had with him at that position. The fact is, if they wanted to, they could say, never mind, we like him better as a wide receiver. He will be classified as a wide receiver. I don't know if they'll do that or not, but listen, even if he's a wide receiver, he's going to have value. Julio Jones's days are limited. Don't get me wrong, his contract's up. There's already rumors that they were talking about trading him to get more draft picks. So they're possibly Julio could be gone, but we're going to focus on what we do know right now. I think Kyle Pitts can be relevant. He will be the third option on this team, though. Now, listen, we could have a talk. If Julio goes, value goes way up. And Matt Ryan's a guy that's going to give him the ball. But in the position right now, I still would draft him as a tight end. I haven't had a chance to really evaluate where I'd have him in the tight end positions.
It's a tricky situation, and we were talking about this off camera earlier today. And would I drop him in anywhere higher than Andrews? Probably not. At the beginning of the season, I would even have Gesicki higher at the beginning of the season. That doesn't mean that I believe that Pitts is going to be a Kittle or Kelsey-esque tight end in the next 2 to 3 years. Sure. The issue is that most tight ends take 2 to 3 years to develop into who they need to be. It takes just a little bit longer. And in this offense, though, where he is tailor-made for their style in terms of an offensive weapon, but not as a blocking weapon, I think that he's perfect. I actually kind of hope that the running back, if they picked up another running back, that would be a good blocking running back. Mike Davis is okay, but not necessarily.
He is a veteran, though. I'll give him that. He's a veteran. So
it's interesting to see. I don't trust the blocking skill of him, but in terms of like when he's on the field, they're going to throw. He's basically, the wide receiver 3 on that team when he's on. So,
if you really, looking at it, you just see how potential this offense could get. Even if they go with the 5 linemen, you got Matt Ryan here. They go with the 2 tight end set. You got Hurst and Pitts there with Ridley and Julio on the outside, and then Mike Davis behind you. That's pretty impressive. Like those are some pretty. That's a good offensive core there.
So I ask you again, at the end of this, would it really shock you to see Matt Ryan as maybe QB5 or QB6 at this point? Not to say that he will, but would it really shock you? Because with all of the weapons that he has, and the fact that he still has an arm.
I mean, listen, he's been a top 5. He's been a top 3 in the past. I wouldn't shock me. And honestly, maybe after talking about it, maybe he's the one with the most fantasy value that has been gained through all this. We'll see. Everybody wants to talk about the sexy guys, the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens. He's a veteran, and he's Kyle Pitts. Yeah, he's the only one that's new. Oh man, bringing WWE into it.
Oh god,
I don't even know. I don't know if Matt Ryan can get down. I don't know if he'd be called sexy, but I'll tell you what. Let me tell you what, man. We talked about going to see Atlanta. Now I'm really let's go, man. I want to watch a game.
I want to see Atlanta put up 45 points and Dallas put up 46. Like, can we just run that game back again and the pain that? No, I joke. Atlanta fans, I'm kidding. That actually broke my heart a little bit. Dallas fans, I'm kidding because I really liked. See me, I'm playing it on all sides. No, that was actually the best game last season to me to watch. But it was also
great.
I was like, what is happening here? I think several people lost their jobs from that game. But I'm sorry if you're watching this. I apologize to those people that lost their jobs. Anyway, no, I'm excited about the Atlanta offense again. I hope that they improve their defense enough to the point that they're not just going to give up 45 points, or whatever. I forget the final score is what 42.
No, I got you. I don't even remember, dude.
It was.
Yeah, it was a crazy game, but yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. I think that all these guys could have some really interesting upside. I want to see how they all break it down, and we'll look forward. We'll see it soon. I mean, it is what it is. But moving on.
Let's finish off the NFC South with the New Orleans Saints.
So right now, we are discussing. We're gonna talk about the Saints. We're gonna talk about that as we go forward in the NFC South. Post draft, we've got all this stuff going on, and the Saints. I've been avoiding talking about them. I'll be honest with you. I'm afraid to talk about them because what do you do with guys like Michael Thomas that missed a lot of last year and it came out hurt, and also a change up in quarterback? What do you do with an Alvin Kamara who the offensive scheme kind of changes with depending upon your quarterback?
Sure.
And how they're going to handle their life. Like, where do the relevancy go? What about other wide receivers? And in terms of their draft class, it looks like they're drafting for the future, maybe not drafting necessarily to try and win now. So, Brady, Statty, Brady, what? Let's start with Michael Thomas. To me, Michael Thomas,
Okay.
1 year ago, Michael Thomas was a top 5 pick.
Yes. I mean, listen, everybody after he was finished number 1 2 years ago, everybody had him out as the number 1 guy. He was the number 1 wide receiver. Not to me, though. I think, Andrew, you know where I stood, and Devontae Adams.
But
Devontae Adams was my guy.
Like, we were seeing most services.
Sure.
And it wasn't an unreasonable thought process. You expected him to get a lot of targets.
Sure.
And get yards after the catch and be very sure-handed while he did it. But things have changed.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, there's a lot of things that changed. One, we knew he was injured last year. He had a high ankle sprain. That always affects guys, unless you're Terry McLaurin and you just play through and you had 2 high ankle sprains by the end of the season we didn't even know about. But anyways,
he's Terry McLaurin.
Because he's Terry McLaurin. Michael Thomas is still a tremendous wide receiver. He was hurt. Then we also heard those crazy things where he punched a teammate and there was a disciplinary issue. So he didn't make a game for that one. There were some crazy things going on in that stuff. Then you throw in the fact that his Hall of Fame quarterback is no longer there. And listen, Michael Thomas flourished in that offense because of Drew Brees. Drew Brees was such an accurate quarterback. He could put the ball where he wanted to, not to mention that Michael Thomas is just a tremendous athlete. He's hard to guard. And now that factor is gone. They're trying to just, you got to look at, we don't know. Is it going to be Taysom Hill? Is it going to be Jameis Winston? There's value for each one of those.
Let's take a step back on and let's
Sure.
go into the Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston value and differences in their play style. Which, by the way, the fact that I want to discuss those two really just shows the volatility of being able to trust, to me, the Saints for anything
Sure.
in fantasy next season.
No, I agree. I mean, it's fine. Listen, fantasy value can be shaken. We don't know. Listen. So this is the way we look at it. We've seen what the offense looks like with Taysom Hill under center. They don't pass as much. They do a lot of run heavy stuff. Taysom Hill is a very athletic guy. They use him as a tight end. So he's got value as far as with his legs. You would think that takes away some value of Alvin Kamara, which we'll talk about in a different aspect. But in the terms of Michael Thomas, what we're talking about, he still found Michael Thomas. Like Michael Thomas had some PPR value when Taysom Hill's on the field because Michael Thomas is a guy that is going to get wide open and you can easily dump it off to him. Does not mean he's going to hit him deep or anything like that. Even though Taysom Hill does have a pretty good arm. So I think the value there is okay. You throw in a guy like Jameis Winston, who we know what Jameis Winston is. He wants to chuck the ball. Yeah, he's the guy that's going to throw the ball, good or bad. The ball's going to be somewhere, whether it's to the defender or whether it's but to one of his guys. But Michael Thomas didn't fall in value for me as much as I know there's other places he fell in value. I still think he's going to be a huge focal point for that offense, whether that's Taysom Hill, whether that's Jameis Winston. I think he is the guy because really they don't have any other wide receivers there. So I think they'll be looking for him. And Sean Payton runs that offense where Michael Thomas can get open. You can't hardly guard the guy one-on-one. He's such a good route runner. Plus he's such a long target to hit. So like I said, most people, I think they put him down past the top 10. Personally, I've got him at number 5 or 6. Slowly maybe transitioning A.J. Brown to take him over, put him behind A.J. Brown. But that's the kind of value I still have Michael Thomas at. Could I be wrong? Maybe we'll find out more as the season goes on once we have a determination of which quarterback. But I think he's fine in either quarterback's scheme.
I mean, Michael Thomas I wouldn't go as far to say he's quarterback proof. He definitely was best when Drew Brees was around.
Sure.
But when Teddy Bridgewater was throwing him the ball, he was good.
Exactly.
And Taysom Hill, which I don't think I don't trust Taysom Hill as much, or the offense they try and run with him as much with a passing game. I expect it to be a dump off. But let me bring you to Alvin Kamara in that situation, because if you're Alvin Kamara, I'd almost rather have Jameis Winston because he's going to throw. It's going to be more passing, running back movement, and Taysom Hill has taken some of those runs.
Yes.
So what do you do then?
Well, see, right now I'm not going to panic too much. One, this is my thinking. I agree with you. With Taysom Hill, we saw on those 4 games where it was Kamara and Hill. Kamara's value went down. He wasn't getting those dump offs like he did from Drew Brees. Not to mention Taysom Hill took away some of those, the rushing touchdowns that Alvin Kamara would normally have. Jameis Winston's in there. They're going to throw the ball. I mean, Kamara's going to get his touches, but Winston's going to find him. So I can see the concerns. At the same time, I'm kind of like, listen, Sean Payton is a very good coach. He likes Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, he knows what he has with Alvin Kamara. He's liked him since he was a rookie. He even put him in there over Adrian Peterson when they had him for that just like 2 games. He likes him. I think they're going to change their offense in the offseason a little bit because when you've got a guy that is proven like Alvin Kamara is, you're going to get in the offense, which is why I didn't drop him down. I can see why people would be concerned. When you got guys like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, you know what the role is. Even Derrick Henry, you know what they're going to do. You are for those that are worried. That's why I bring him down a little bit. If you're worried about him, I get it. I totally get it, because we saw what happened without Drew Brees. But again, I still think that some of that was they were trying to run a offense that Drew Brees runs with Taysom Hill just plugging in, and that's not going to work. They're going to have to change their offensive scheme, and I think they're going to change that around Alvin Kamara. I think they know Alvin Kamara is their future. Like, he is their guy, even though Michael Thomas is great. Don't get me wrong, but Alvin Kamara is the guy. They know what they've got with him. So
do you think Alvin Kamara doesn't change regardless of quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, don't get me wrong. I do think Jameis Winston, you are correct. I would feel more comfortable with Jameis Winston. He's going to dump the ball off to him. But even with the scheme with Taysom Hill, they're going to try to find ways to utilize him, even in the passing game. I just feel at this point, I feel more comfortable with Jameis Winston in there.
For fantasy purposes.
Yeah, with regard to fantasy value for Alvin Kamara.
And this is the problem with fantasy meeting reality. Like, in reality, I can totally see why Taysom Hill would be there. He's going to get you shorter yardage, but he's going to control the ball more, fewer turnovers. On the other hand, as a fantasy guy, I want to see as many points as I possibly can get.
Sure. And listen, they may throw a curveball at both of us, and they may say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to run a 50-50 set where Jameis Winston, you're in there at certain times, Taysom Hill's in there for certain packages. I mean, it's not traditionally done, but
or maybe. Oh, this is what they're waiting for. Winston is their quarterback to start, but Taysom Hill is their tight end to start for the season.
I you know what? I'll be honest. I would be okay with that.
I think that'd be really interesting. And
I mean, and also their offense. There's so much you could do in that aspect, and we saw some of it in Washington with a guy like Logan Thomas, who was their tight end, who was an ex-quarterback. That they would throw him the ball, hike it to him in certain ways, and then let him throw. You could do so many options. And again, that's why I kind of think I would like Jameis Winston, because I think Taysom Hill has value even outside of being the quarterback. You can use him in a lot of packages. You can use him to rush the ball. You can use him as a pass catcher. They've done that before in the past. So I think you utilize him at his strength, have Jameis Winston in there as well. But you're going to there's so many sneaky things that they could do.
I think it'd be fun to watch. I'm interested to see what the Saints do. I don't have as much faith in them this year as I have in years past, but I can see some upside. I can, obviously if Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara falls to me in my lap, I'm probably going to pick him up.
Sure. Let me ask you. Just let's have some debate back and forth since we went really fast on this so far. Alvin Kamara. Would you rather have Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley? Because I think that could be a big choice that people may have to make. Saquon with the question of health, because people are like, hey, I've drafted in the last 2 years. He's gotten hurt and kind of lost me. Or the uncertainty of Alvin Kamara in this offense. I think that's a tough choice that people might have to face at pick 3 or so.
And I think it's a very valuable. And let's go with the Dalvin Cook. Let me add that into it. Or you know what? Give me a Derrick Henry in that situation, okay? Because Derrick Henry's still going to be on the board in that situation. So let me tell you what I would do. At this point, Alvin Kamara is going to be number 1 on that list between the 3.
Okay.
Only because Saquon, I still haven't seen enough from the Giants' offensive line to believe that Saquon can stay healthy, and that Saquon can actually, be who he was 2 years ago. I mean, I'm not. This is not a knock on the guy, but right now, this is what's going on. Kamara has come off with injury, and he's come back and been valuable. However, it would be Kamara first because his upside is higher than Derrick Henry's upside. Derrick Henry, though, he's number 2 on that list for me right now, because Derrick Henry, exactly what he's going to get. You've been talking about how he's going to get injured, or how his limited passing game upside or whatnot. but dude, he's just, you know what he's going to get. And honestly, if you have that pick, I believe that you're more likely to lose a season in the first pick than you are to win one. And I'd rather have stability in my first round.
Okay. See, right. I'm a little opposite on that. Like my take,
and I'm not going to dog you for it. But then the third one would be Saquon Barkley, and I'm not trying to dog it because here's what I got going on with Saquon Barkley, because I think he's going to be really good next year. I believe that he's going to come back. I've seen the film, and obviously the film is designed to make me feel better about, not give up. But the Giants have upgraded their offensive line. We have the Giants have upgraded their aerial weapons, which will open it up for Saquon to do other things that he hasn't had that luxury of doing as much. Daniel Jones hasn't been able to throw the ball. He's been on his back the entire time. Better offensive line, better offensive tackle, better options to get the ball off faster because guys have a better first step, like Galladay, who can just do some amazing things. I think that the Giants are going to have weeks where they are just amazing and fun to watch. I also think that the Giants are going to have weeks where they are unwatchable, but because guys like Galladay and Saquon Barkley can have weeks that they could not do as well. But I feel like, to me, I draft stability, you draft for upside. And, and that's the difference. And that's a direct choice of how we play the game.
Sure. I mean, I'm actually, it's funny is I actually go a little opposite this morning. To me, the most stable out of those three is Derrick Henry. Agreed. Just because, that's why I put Derrick Henry for this year. If you're drafting a redraft, Derrick Henry is third to me. And then it comes down to, are you more nervous about the offense with Kamara? Are you worried more about the injury with Saquon? If you take away both those equations, is Saquon so much better than Kamara that you would think about it? I mean, it was hard for me, but I just can't get past the injuries. I think with somebody like Kamara, they're going to design an offense around it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're already having to change your offense because you're Hall of Fame.
So Kamara was my 1, Henry was my 2, and Saquon was my 3.
See, I'm going Henry and then probably Kamara and then Barkley for me.
So we were close. We're not that.
Yeah, we're close. No.
I just think the upside of Kamara is higher only because of the pass catching ability. And I believe that the difference breaking. It's tomatoes, man. It's like,
well, and I mean, I don't think you're going to go wrong with any of those guys. I just know this, like, I'm probably not going to have very many shares of Barkley this year because most people, if you have the second or third overall pick, you're probably going to draft him. Where me, if I've got the second or third overall pick, besides Christian McCaffrey, I'm going Dalvin Cook. That's just me.
Question: if he gets to pick 6. Pick number 6. Are you going to be unhappy taking any of them?
No, God, no. At that point, if you got number 6 and somebody happens to drop to you, oh man, you just take the best available, whatever's there. That's fine. Because the only way that's going to happen is if the guy or somebody, whoever's picking 4th or 5th, if they decide to take Devontae Adams, or if they are so high, I wouldn't go that. But if they're so high
somebody
on
will do it, though.
Jonathan Taylor, if they're higher on Jonathan Taylor, because I've seen a couple of mock drafts where people are drafting Taylor in the 4th overall pick or something like that.
And that's risky based on history or the lack thereof. But I feel like, it's really funny because I remember reading an article last year where they said, Jonathan Taylor, he's the guy that at some point you may not take at number 5, but you'll question whether or not you should next season. And I thought that's probably true. And then he had a rough beginning of the year, right? We expected him to come out and just be sharp. And it didn't happen to week 8, 9, 10?
It was, I think it was week 8 actually probably week 9, because I remember thinking after week 7, their bye week, I was like, this is the week, this is what we're going to tell. He's had, the offseason was terrible for everybody. So this was it.
You were trying to dump him at that point.
I was getting nervous because the trade deadline was coming up in our league. And I was like, what can we do here? And I will say this: I'm glad I held on because better days would come. But here's the thing: once I knew the talent was there, I just felt like the Colts didn't. Maybe it was a way to try to get the most out of him. Like, hey, you proved to us why we should give you more playing time. Even though everybody else thinks he should be the guy, you proved to us. And finally, when they made that decision and they actually gave him the ball, what he looked like at the end was absolutely phenomenal. I tend to think that that's what's going to be like for next year. And I think there's a lot of people that buy into that. Even though I love him, how much I love him, I still don't have him ranked. I still have him as the 8th best running back because we just had a little switch. I'm moving Aaron Jones down a little bit because I'm a little nervous about Aaron Jones. if Rodgers leaves,
is he the only one that Aaron Rodgers doesn't affect completely? Because they did.
Oh,
like, I mean,
you're. I see what you're saying. I think I know what you're saying. You're right, and it could be that he is not affected. I'm just what Aaron Rodgers does to the rest of that offense that makes him have easy lanes, plus the passing game aspect. That's why I was so high on Aaron Jones. I moved him all the way up to 7 when they got rid of Jamal Williams because I was like, oh man, he's going to get the touchdowns, and even if he doesn't, and AJ Dillon steals some of them. Passing game. He's the only guy in the passing game now. So is he going to get 5 targets a game? If he is, he's an easy RB1. Perfect. Without Aaron Rodgers there, I'm a little more nervous now, possibly. We don't know.
There's Maybe a lot that we don't know going into the season. There's still a lot of question marks going on. Right now, we are going to move on to the next that'll wrap it up, by the way, for this division. But let's go on. Let's move forward to the next one.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below.